Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler,
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
and this is the episode that is going to serve as our season preview for the 2023 Baltimore Orioles. It's a little bit different this year, guys. How are you feeling heading into 2020? We're recording this about a week or 6 days before opening day. It's probably going to get released a little bit after that. But yeah, Jesse, how are you feeling?
It's nice to be an Orioles fan and not be heading into the season thinking we may be losing 100 games this year. And are we going to lose 100? Are we going to lose 98? That kind of
Right.
thing. So from that perspective, I'm feeling really excited about it. So
Nice.
we might even be 500. So,
We might.
Yeah.
There are some prognosticators out there that don't agree, but
right. We'll be.
feels-
We're going to turn into some prognosticators later. So
It's a tough word to say. I had issues myself. Eli, how are you?
I feel pretty good. I think this year holds a nice combination of a floor of performance, and I think the floor is just below 500, and the potential for more with some of these prospects coming up with, the second year of Adley, the 1.5 year of Gunnar. I don't know. I think it's going to be great. We're going to get to see Grayson Rodriguez on an MLB mound for the first time. Knock on wood.
On opening or on the opening day roster, yes or no? We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Also, just want to make it clear that our excitement about the season does not in any way let Elias off the hook for his nonsense this offseason. So,
Well,
yeah.
His
Again,
nonsense
That we talked about last podcast.
Yeah, but there's still
just wanna
debate
make
over
that
whether
clear.
it's Elias or Angelos.
In any case,
Well,
the front
that's
office.
that's what I was going to say. Well, and the news this week of they're opening up a new restaurant. It's like a sports book restaurant replacing Dempsey's in the Warehouse. They might be selling the naming rights to Oriole Park.
Dude.
All terrible, awful things that
Right.
are.
And they took the sun sign down.
Yeah, I know. I have kind of mixed feelings there.
I don't know. Did they expect us to just look at the scoreboard to figure out whether it was a hit or an error, like the rest of the world does?
Yeah, I think it's another Angelo's son idea to make a little bit more money. The son apparently wasn't paying for the spot for a couple years,
Right.
And I've got whole thoughts on the Baltimore Sun anyway.
Well,
But
that's fair.
Well, the paper has really deteriorated over the years steadily.
This is not a newspaper podcast.
It's not even printed in the city anymore. It's printed in Delaware.
That's
So
I did not know that.
I didn't either, but that's terrible.
But once
yeah.
again, this is not a newspaper podcast.
But we also, I agree with you. I like seeing the hit of the air thing on that. That was nice. It was a nice.
So they can get
different
another
feature.
sponsor that pays, that has an H and an E in the name.
I guess as long as you have the word "the," it'll work
Yeah.
out.
Yep. The Warehouse Podcast.
Ah.
We also cannot pay, but we would love
Right.
to.
Well,
Right.
I mean, this is announcing our GoFundMe, right?
Yeah.
So
They
everybody
could put-
come donate, and we'll make it whatever color you guys want.
There you go.
Got to be black and orange, obviously. Yeah.
Well, that
I'm just-
what we're gonna do this episode is gonna preview the roster for the year, talk about some of the spring training storylines that are wrapping up this week. Kind of delve into different things as we go through the roster, and then at the end we'll give some predictions on our win-loss record, MVP, Team Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, and then if there's any other wild predictions we want to make, I guess we'll throw them in there at the end. But let's kind of just go through the roster right now and get a feel for how things are there, because I think, and Eli and I were talking about this before we started recording, there's a lot of stability this year that we haven't exactly had in seasons prior. You said it's the second year of Adley. Gunnar is gonna play on the infield somewhere, but it just feels like there are less question marks on this year's team. So I guess I'll just kind of go through sort of where we're looking right now as far as the everyday lineup, which is Adley behind the plate, Mountcastle at first. Second base is a bit of a question mark. I think maybe that's something worth delving into, but it does seem like Ramon Urias and Adam Frazier are kind of the top options there. Jorge Mateo at shortstop, Gunnar Henderson at third. Again, some question marks there. And then the outfield right now seems to be Mullins, Santander, and Hayes. although we could see Kyle Stowers sneak into the starting lineup more often. And then on the bench, we got McCann behind the plate. One of Urias or Frazier, likely Terran Vavra, ? And then Ryan McKenna and Stowers are the other outfielders in the mix. So let's stop there and maybe kind of go back to some of the things that were question marks there. I'll start at second base, and maybe let's talk about that a little bit. Eli, how are you feeling about the Orioles' second base situation with what feels like Ramon Urias and Adam Frazier, but I'm not totally sure that that's the situation. What's your read on it?
I think the thing to say is, like, despite the uncertainty, I think it's, I don't know, calling it a stable position with uncertainty is kind of oxymoronic, so to speak. But I think either way we go, both of them are pretty they're both plus defenders. I think that either way, whoever is in the lineup on a given day, that will be like a solid boon to a pitching staff that's still developing, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I think we'll have a strong middle of the infield. And I think, like, I don't know, interestingly enough, infield defense is kind of like one of the biggest strengths of this Orioles team. I think pretty much all the way around the diamond we're I think we're solid. So I think that we might see a little bit of platooning. I think that Adam Frazier is going to be interesting. Obviously, he had the really, really good year 2 years ago, had the terrible year last year. So I think that there are questions, but I feel good about it. However it shakes out, I guess, is the simple thing. I don't know, Jess, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think the Orioles are going to be clearly in a much better situation at second base than we were last year. Normally, I would think that I mean, my tendency would be to think that Urias has the edge at second base, but Frazier was the guy who we signed and we went out of our way to go get. So that kind of makes me think the Orioles are sort of looking at Frazier maybe as the main second baseman, and then maybe Urias is gonna come off the bench for him and then probably play other positions too. Play a third for Gunnar every once in a while. I think that's where Gunnar is going to be. And then, even when in the infrequent situations when Mateo gets a rest day, play some short. But so I think obviously Urias is a flexible option who could play multiple defensive infield positions. So I think it's likely that Frazier is going to be the main guy at second base just from early indications from the Orioles.
Yeah, that does seem to be the situation. I think your point's a good one, Jesse, that that's the guy they went and signed. I think they have some belief there. And I think on the Urias situation, I've felt for a little while now that the Orioles don't really love Urias as a middle infielder. I think like second base, they like him better than shortstop, obviously. But he got hurt, I think, sometime in 2021 and was playing a lot of short at the time. And since that, they've kind of like shied away from him on the middle infield. And so that's kind of why I'm sort of thinking Frazier is more of the second baseman most days. And then I think we're going to see Jorge Mateo on the bench more often than we did last year. And I think Gunnar's going to slide over and you see Urias play a lot of third. Because the guy just won the Gold Glove at third base, and that's not nothing.
Right.
So that's sort of my read on the situation. But Jesse, you seemed a little bit unsure when I talked about Gunnar sliding around.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I think the Orioles probably would like to find him a solid position, and I think it makes sense kind of how this lineup is looking to have him play third base every day, or almost every day, or rest him, ideally, I think it's not great for him to be moving around a bunch. And I also think I also think that Mateo, it's likely will get similar playing time to what he did last year. I don't think he's really going to play substantially less than he did last year.
I don't know. I mean, the thing with Mateo is that, we talked about the rule change stuff, I think, before the podcast. and how it's going to feed into Mateo's skill set a little bit. I mean, that's sort of an X factor there that maybe we don't know about yet, but he was just so poor at the plate last year that I think you can have Mateo as sort of a super utility option. He played some center field today in the game that happened the day we're recording. I think you can get a lot of his value by stashing him on the bench a lot of the time, bringing him in 7th, 8th, 9th inning as a pinch runner, as a defensive replacement, to get a lot of the value that he does provide without the negative that his bat is most of the time. But at the same time, I do agree. Like, I would prefer for Gunnar to have a set position, and I think third base probably is the better choice for him long term. But the Orioles are moving him around a lot in the spring. They're not treating him like he is the third baseman. He's playing equal time pretty much at short and at third. So the Orioles' actions don't tell me that he is like the third baseman. But it's also spring training, and that might not matter at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's in the Orioles' interest to keep working Gunnar at short, just because, you don't know how the team's going to look in even 2 years. For right now, it makes sense to have him playing third base because we do have such a stellar defensive shortstop. But yeah, I mean, that could change pretty quickly. And as some of these infield prospects start pushing their way up and all this stuff is changing around Gunnar, the optimal alignment might not end up there. So keep the flexibility. But then again, to Jesse's point, whether they do that in the game or whether, that's getting ground balls before the game at shortstop, I'm not totally sure. I think I tend to lean Jesse's way on this. I think that Mateo at short, Gunnar at third is the alignment for 2/3 of our games this year. 2/3 of the first half is what I'll say.
Right.
I think some things will start to change when the Ortizes, the Norbys, the Westbergs of the world start pushing their way up and second base gets more and more crowded. But I don't know. I think the short answer is I think we are going to trade somebody by the time the deadline rolls around, maybe 2 people out of our infield, and that will give us our answers then.
I'm in agreement with that. And yeah, I think it is possible potentially that it does end up being Mateo that gets traded at the deadline. I think that is a real possibility. And I also think the one other thing I would say, Tyler, about his offense is, yes, obviously, we know Mateo struggles at the plate, especially relative to his defense. A little bit of that is offset by not maybe offset is not the right word, but he does compensate for it a little bit by his speed on the base pass. So that does help, when, you could theoretically bump up his, slugging percentage a little bit, because when he gets a single, sometimes it's actually a double, because he steals second or whatever.
Sure.
So, but overall, I mean, you're right that we have legitimate offensive concerns with Mateo. So I do think it is possible, especially with the prospect depth the Orioles have, that he does end up getting traded at the deadline. And in a situation like that, of course, other people, Ortiz and Westberg, are in play for shortstop, but it's also very possible at that point then that Henderson would move over to short. So I think I agree with you too. He's obviously a capable shortstop. I think I would prefer him at third. But from the Orioles' perspective, maintaining some flexibility, right, in where he's going to play does make sense.
Right. I mean, in his offensive profile, he would be a star as a shortstop, even like an average fielding shortstop. But if he has the power and the ability at the plate he does, he's a star shortstop, whereas he's a little more, not run of the mill necessarily, but a little closer to the average that you get at third base. But if he's a Gold Glove caliber third baseman, then, you're talking about in the Nolan Arenado type of conversation. Maybe not quite there, obviously, right away, but eventually. And I think another element of this, not necessarily the major league picture this year, but going into 2024 is what Jackson Holliday can do, where he starts, maybe with Aberdeen, like we've talked about before, half the season with Aberdeen, half the season with Bowie, and then that puts him on pace to debut sometime in Baltimore in 2024.
Right.
He's going to be the shortstop, I think, ahead of Gunnar. It seems, at least the way they talk about him from a fielding perspective, he's a little bit of a smaller guy, a little more, not necessarily more athletic, but a little more sleight of frame that seems to fit a little bit better as a shortstop. And he's probably who the team is thinking is shortstop long term. So, I think that maybe factors into the thought process a little bit as well. But I'll buy, though, that like out of the gate, Mateo is the shortstop until proven that, like, yeah, that 270 on base last year is what he does, and we need to figure out something else if we're going to really be in the playoff push. So I buy that, but the spring has been a little bit unclear in terms of what the team is exactly thinking the plan is with Gunnar, but I hear what you guys are saying.
Yeah, the last point on this, because we've been on it for a minute, but I think that like it's also just sort of the preference of the Orioles. Obviously, I think Gunnar is, a plus third base defender. Obviously, ODS is that. So, I think you can. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to call them a wash because ODS did win a Gold Glove, so I'll give him the slight edge there. But I think that Mateo over Gunnar at short is I don't know, let's say, a 1 grade boost, whatever that means. But, so I think that there's a question of, I think that the total WAR production from the left side of the infield, the best alignment probably is Urias and Gunnar. I think just the slightly lesser defense, but larger offensive impact, you probably went out there net. But I do think there's a question of what do we want? We brought in Kyle Gibson, who's a super contact pitcher. Dean Kramer does not have huge strikeout numbers. And so it's kind of like, which way do you want to gear the team? And, we don't totally have insight into that. But because we do have some relatively low strikeout options, maybe like when Grayson Rodriguez is pitching, then Gunnar slides over to short and Urias is there and you maximize your offensive impact, something like that. But I just think it's a factor.
I do think this is a good point, though, because I do think the Orioles are making a point to put forward potentially the best infield, most of the time that we can, especially to support the young pitching staff the Orioles have. So I think, in Eli's terms, the 1 grade boost edge that Mateo has over Henderson at shortstop is going to hold a lot of weight with the Orioles front office because they do want, to support the young pitchers as much as possible, and any ground balls that don't get through the infield, I think they're going to view as really important to be accounting for.
That's a totally valid point. Well, let's stick on the infield for a second and let's talk about Terrin Vavra because I think it's relevant to the conversation, not necessarily the shortstop conversation, but he's sort of an interesting one. He's not in the prospect category anymore. He's clearly not going to be an everyday starter for this team. He's a guy that I think a lot of people on Twitter, at least in particular, want the Orioles to give more of a chance to play, but I don't exactly know where he fits on the roster, although I do agree with this outline Eli's put together for us of having him on the opening day roster as a bench piece that can kind of do a couple different things. Eli, what are you thinking about Terrin Vavra and where he sort of fits in the 2023 Orioles?
Yeah, it is a super weird question. Just in the sense of I also don't really see the spot, we're going to, it feels like continuously be rotating the other 4 infielders that we've talked about. They've given Vavra some time at first, but James McCann, Anthony Santander, all of these guys have gotten rotations at first. And we are also auditioning about 17 left-handed first base DH types. So, there's and Vavra, quite frankly, can't handle the outfield. I know we had him in corner outfield last year. But, we've got better options out there. I'd have Kyle Stowers out in the outfield. any day of the week. I'd have Austin Hayes out there, obviously Santander. So I don't really know, like, even what profile he fits. Like the on base skills are very nice. Like I think it was like 340 in his first little sample, which is great. But the he's been slugging a little bit in the spring, but the like power potential is just not there to make him kind of an impact pinch hitter. Maybe if you are trying to draw a walk, trying to just get a runner on base, he could be a solid pinch hitter. But, the once a week situation where you need a lefty to come pinch hit doesn't justify a full bench spot to me. So I think that in my eyes, once Westberg is still in camp and there's a very outside shot that Westberg has done enough to jump on as a utility infielder here for opening day. I don't think that happens because I think that they like value him more as a future player. And so I think that they'll make sure he's getting everyday reps in AAA. I think that's the priority for them, is to have him in a lineup every day, which he obviously wouldn't do on the MLB team. But yeah, I don't know. I think that Vavra is kind of filling in right now. And that's like to no fault of his own. I just don't really see a spot for him.
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, this is sort of one of the deals with signing Frazier, right? Is that you're kind of moving on from Vavra or putting him sort of in the rear view mirror because we can expect that he's not going to get the look that he could have gotten had the Orioles not signed Frazier. So there's that part of it. I think Eli's right that yeah, I mean having him as a pinch hitter like doesn't exactly make sense. The Orioles have better bench options from a hitting perspective this coming year. And like we've been talking about, like our depth on the infield is probably good enough where if we had a pinch hitter come in for somebody, we could then replace that pinch hitter with another second baseman or utility infield or something like that to plug that spot. We wouldn't need a pinch hitter for specifically a second baseman in most situations. So I think it's sort of at a point where he's on the outside looking in, and whether that results in him getting traded or I'm not sure, but I don't know how the Orioles give him a genuine look at this point with this roster construction.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing that keeps him from being like a fine utility option is that he's not really a shortstop option. They haven't played him there at all in the spring. They have put him in center field a little bit. Or they put him in center field last year in the spring a little bit, which is interesting, but he's not
I don't
really,
buy that.
Yeah, he's not really a center field fit either. Like that's where there's just not the physical skills that even like Mateo clearly has the physical skills. He's super fast, super athletic, could play center field, I think, in a pinch if you really needed him to. Can obviously play shortstop. And then you've got Westbrook, who you talked about, who can play shortstop. He is a shortstop. Like, no, might not be a Gold Glove caliber one, but he's a steady option there. And if you think the thing with Westbrook is like, if you think he's already ready to be that guy, then I think you've got to put Westbrook on the roster and you've got to play him a lot, like you said, Jess. Yeah, you signed Frazier, and that's fine, but it's a 1-year deal. Like, put him on the bench, put Frazier on the bench, and play Westbrook at second base. If you think that's the answer, and if you've got him in camp this late, maybe the Orioles do think he's the answer, and you just give Westbrook the second base job. And if he struggles, you send him back down. But that's the thing. The Norfolk infield is packed, too. It has Norby. It has Ortiz. Those guys have to play every day too. And if you think Ortiz is a shortstop and Norby's a second baseman, that's where you want to play them too. So I don't know. This comes back to like the Orioles should have traded more of the prospects during the offseason, and they just didn't. And not that it's necessarily a problem. It's a good problem to have, but it does present you with some weird stuff. It makes the Frazier signing look weirder in retrospect. Vavra being around is fine. It just makes he's more of a filler piece than a real difference maker. But yeah, it's a weird spot on the roster to have. But if they're not sure about all of it, yeah, he makes the opening day roster and probably yo-yos up and down when you have an injury or two. Because I think if he's in the lineup for a day or two as the second baseman and the third baseman, I feel fine about it. But no, I don't want Terrin Vavra in the lineup 5 days out of the week. You know what I mean?
Right. The main point I was trying to make is right. The Orioles are no longer thinking about him in their long-term plans.
Right. But I don't even know that they ever.
That's over. Right.
I don't know that they ever were though.
Right. Right. For sure.
I don't even view the Frazier signing as really blocking him necessarily, because I think if they don't sign Frazier, then it becomes more obvious that Westberg is the guy at second base or that Urias is the guy at second base. You know what I mean? I think Vavra was always like, yeah, he's like a depth option that I think is perfectly fine to have. But yeah, but Frazier being here does make it tougher for Vavra to even make the team and stay on the team. So that in that respect, yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess then, like, I think there is an open question, like, of these, Franchy Cordeos, Ryan O'Hearns, Nomar Mazara's, like, I don't know. Is it more plausible after this discussion? It's getting more and more plausible to me that one of them does start and break camp and Terrin Vavra does not.
I mean, I think that seems possible, especially given the Orioles' actions. I mean, they're pretty hot on having a legitimate left-handed first base option. And I know we've talked about it being Santander, but the fact that it's this late in camp, and I know Santander had the WBC, that factors into that. He was gone. He was playing outfield for Venezuela. Going they wanted an insurance policy, but of the work he's probably done for them, it must not be very impressive to them. And obviously, he's going to play every day, but they need another option. So, yeah.
Vavra's got 2 option years also. So,
yeah, I think that's distinctly possible then. So then the question becomes which guy? Cordero, I guess.
Yeah, Jess and I, it's kind of funny. Franchy Cordero has been hitting the cover off the ball.
Of course he has.
Yeah, but he's 450, 450, 750 is the triple slash over 40 at-bats.
Yeah.
So he hasn't taken a walk? Oh, that's crazy. He hasn't taken a walk. 450, 450, 750. Anyway, yeah, Jess and I saw him, and it was hilarious because he, like, I don't know, he was on third base, and there was a ground ball back to the pitcher, and he got, like, caught out between third and home. It was thrown out there. There was an error in the outfield that let the ball get to the wall, and simultaneously roped, like, 2 doubles and went 4 for 5 on the day or something like that,
Wait, so I mean that go to the scenario where Franchy Cordero might be coming into the game, apart from like a Sunday punt lineup where you're giving Ryan Mountcastle the day off and you're just going to put Cordero out there. It's the 9th inning. The lineup is in 7, 8, 9. You probably have Frazier coming up or Mateo coming up. The Orioles are down by 1. You look to the bench and you got Terrin Vavra and you got Franchy Cordero. Who's right. Brendan Hyde going, get in the on deck circle?
Like, I want the guy who can hit the ball 500 feet. Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Right. Like Terrin Vavra might give you a little slice into left field and he gets on first base, but Cordero might tie the game up.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So
yeah. Wow.
All right, we solved it.
We just did that. We just talked ourselves into Franchy Cordero.
Right. It's kind of crazy. It's a difficult thing to do, talking yourself into Franchy Cordero, but we at the Warehouse Pod pride ourselves on our ability to twist our own minds.
Side note,
we forgot Lewin Diaz too.
Did they not reassign him yet?
Maybe they did, honestly. I didn't remember it, but I believe it.
Side note, Tyler, I will say I was thinking about you the whole time as I was watching Santander mash home runs for Venezuela. I was thinking about you a lot when that was happening.
I like Anthony Santander.
I know.
There's limitations to his game, and clearly playing first base seems to be one of them. But so, no, I love Anthony. I'm a pro Anthony Santander guy. I think he could bring a lot of value to another team.
And a lot of good prospects back to the Orioles.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a starting pitcher or something. Yeah.
Lewin Diaz is still in camp, according to his transaction log, but haven't seen much of him.
Okay. All right. So Franchi Cordero.
Reggie
He's the
Cordero.
guy. All right. Let's talk outfield really quickly because I think there's some interesting stuff to talk about here. Jesse made a comment. Was it in our last podcast? Maybe it was off the podcast, but you talked about you didn't think Ryan McKenna might make the team. Do we want to revisit
I thought that was a
claim?
possibility.
Do you still think that's a possibility that he doesn't make the opening day? Well, like a realistic possibility.
Not really. No.
Okay.
At this point, I mean,
immediately backs off the take.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you look at the options we have now, and I mean, none of them make sense over him to me.
Okay, fair enough. Now, what about in the corners, though? I think that's kind of interesting. In my mind, I think that it seems like Kyle Stowers is going to start in a corner, Austin Hayes is going to start in a corner, and then Santander is going to be the DH most days. But Santander was playing in the outfield for Venezuela a lot, I think all the time. I just don't love Anthony Santander's glove, and if you can avoid putting him in the outfield, you avoid it. But maybe I'm way off base there. Jesse, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it also makes sense that the Orioles, I mean, we, like you're saying, we have enough outfield options that he could be relegated to a more of a DH role. He is going to necessitate some time in right field because Adley is going to get moved to DH, a decent amount of the time. So when he's not catching and when he's not playing first. So because of that, the Orioles are going to want Santander's bat in the lineup. So he will play right field.
Yeah.
But there are definitely lineup constructions Hyde can employ where he's on the bench and you as a fan don't have to suffer watching him in right field.
Former Gold Glove finalist. Anthony Santander.
2020, baby. I think that there is kind of like what it boils down to for me, right, is if you are pulling Santander to the DH position, that puts Austin Hayes or Kyle Stowers, like whichever one you think isn't the primary. I think Austin Hayes gets another run out there and Stowers is the bench option. But so that puts Kyle Stowers in right field, which then says that whichever infielder is not in the lineup that day cannot be the DH. And so I think like there's some debate as to whether you would rather have Ramon Diaz's glove or Kyle Stowers, or I'm sorry, Ramon Diaz's bat or Kyle Stowers' bat in the lineup, if Frazier's playing that day or vice versa. And I think Stowers' bat obviously has more potential, like there's a higher ceiling. And quite frankly, he did perform well last year. It's just such a small sample size that, it's probably a sure thing that Ramon Diaz can, hit major league pitching over the course of a full season. So I think that's an open question there. I really do not dislike the idea of like Stowers in the lineup every day. He's another lefty, which, the lineup needs a little bit of, and yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think because we talked about this as well, it's just the time span for Kyle Stowers to actually show that he can be a guy is getting short really fast because we know Colton Cowser is coming. It's only a matter of time. He had a good spring. He was in AAA already. I mean, I think we've got April and May to look at Kyle Stowers and then Colton Cowser is probably going to be up regardless. It just becomes whether Cowser goes down or a trade is made or an injury, whatever it may be.
Hayes gets traded or something.
Hayes gets traded. Yeah. It's getting shorter and shorter for him to prove what he can do. So we'll see. I think Brandon Hyde had a quote earlier this spring that he is going to get a chance to face left-handed pitching on a regular basis, which wasn't something they really let him do last year, which is interesting because then you have Ryan McKenna there. Not that Ryan McKenna is some beast at the plate, but Ryan McKenna hit lefties pretty well last year, while Stowers didn't play against them, and Cedric Mullins struggled against them again after being pretty good the previous year. So,
what's McKenna's role now? You're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately McKenna is still, like, in my mind, is like just such a good fourth outfielder because he's fast, Doesn't necessarily steal bases though, but is a good fielder. And if he can hit lefties, that's like a nice little extra sort of thing that like, hey, like, yeah, we could give Cedric a day off against a tough lefty. You know, when Carlos Rodon gets back for the Yankees, if the Orioles are facing him, let's give Cedric the day off. Let McKenna face, you know, it's a nice like thing for a fourth outfielder to have about him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just kind of going through my brain. If the Orioles are going to play the platoon split thing too much or not. But I think ultimately I'd like to see Kyle Stowers play every day for at least a month or two, give us a better sample size of what he and who he is as a player.
I agree with that. I mean, yeah, the Orioles are definitely not in the old days when, they would get each player would get a 6-month audition, at the major league level, and we would sit around while they really, struggled and that sort of thing. It's
let them try to figure it out. Yeah.
It's like the Orioles are moving forward and you could try to keep up or get left behind, basically. So
right. And the Orioles, I mean, my what I imagine is the Orioles have some internal pecking order of who they're willing to let figure stuff out. Like Gunnar Henderson. Gunnar Henderson's going to have slumps this year. It's just going to happen. They're going to let him figure it out. Kyle Stowers, I think, is going to have a much shorter leash than that. I think they still like him, but like, okay, Kyle, it's been 3 weeks. You're hitting 150. You're striking out 3 times as much as you're walking. Like, maybe we got to try something else. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The only thing I think we wanted to note here was Heston Kjerstad had a really good spring. His slash line was 381, 409, 810, which gives him a 1.219 OPS. Regardless of the competition you're facing there, or I'm sorry, what did I say? Yeah, OPS. That was right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Regardless of the competition you're facing, really impressive numbers, and even better for Kjerstad, who clearly, after he got drafted, had the myocarditis issue, saw his prospect status kind of take a hit as a result. And now I think he's 100% back as a legitimate prospect and sort of changes the complexion of the Orioles long-term and what the outfield looks like, and potentially makes somebody like Hayes or even a Stowers a little bit more expendable when trade time comes. But yeah, just really cool for Heston Kjerstad, and hopefully he keeps it up once the regular season rolls around. Do you guys have anything you want to note about Kjerstad?
I got 2 quick things. First off, shout out to you being a super host, juggling a child and continuing to talk. But second, I am a little curious. Like, don't get me wrong, I am buying into the Heston Kjerstad hype, but it was in 2 short seasons that we were seeing this, between the AFL and spring training. So I am curious if some holes are exposed. This could be partially just like a lack of exposure, a lack of data that teams have on him, and his like swing tendencies, et cetera, et cetera. So sure. I'm curious if things get exposed throughout the course of the year. But that said, obviously the dude's got talent, and this was just really cool to see. It's like you find those people, like, obviously to a lesser extent, but everybody cheers for Trey Mancini, right? Because he's this comeback story. It's great. It's wonderful. And everybody's cheering for Kjerstad in the same vein. I think it's cool he's just a cool story. He seems like a good guy in interviews, and just want the best for him. So it's nice to see him raking.
Kind of like you said, I think the important point is that, right, he has talent, right? And the fact, I mean, he might still get exposed. Of course, he's behind the 8 ball, right? He should be a lot more, theoretically, according to how most prospects go through their development. He's, of course, way behind where he, quote unquote, should have been. And, we're aware of all that. And he might get exposed. And obviously, pitchers in the league are going to make adjustments and stuff. But he is at least demonstrating his potential and the reason why we drafted him. So, of course, that is encouraging. And yeah, he has sort of, kind of like Tyler's saying, like, resurrected his prospect status from the dead, right? For a while, it was, we weren't factoring him in to our outfield, to whatever extent we can, we just talk. But
our regular emails to Mike Elias, we kind of just stop mentioning him.
Exactly.
Like, don't even worry about it, Mike.
Exactly. Right. But I mean, we hadn't really thought that. We thought his career was basically over. So
that's a little bit harsh.
Well, I guess his major league career.
It was looking bleak. It was looking bleak.
So, I mean, it's impressive. I didn't. Maybe I could have said that gentler, but
it's okay.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, that wraps up the position players. Let's move on to the pitchers. News today, I think it was today, Kyle Gibson got named the opening day starter for the Orioles. Jesse's shaking his head already. What did you expect? Were you shocked by this?
No, it's just so depressing. I mean, sure, he's the veteran and, the leader of the pitching staff. He's the Jordan Lyles of, the 2023 Orioles, but
it's right there. It's lame. I mean, it's super lame.
It is right.
Yeah, our friend Ethan, that we went to high school with, was complaining about it's like the 35-year-old on a 1-year deal. It's like, well, you could argue that they are sort of rewarding Dean Kramer for his good year last year because he's getting the home opener the next day, but it's very like, I don't know, this guy's not an important part of the Orioles team in any way, shape, or form. He's an important part.
He's going to play a valuable role for the 2023 only Orioles.
Exactly. And I don't know. I mean, granted, the Red Sox are throwing out Corey Kluber, so it's not like we're going to get blown out of the water. But
I felt like the Orioles faced Corey Kluber like 17 times last year. Every time they faced the Rays, it was like, Corey Kluber's starting. Like, are you kidding again?
Jeez. He was pretty good for them too. So
yeah, well, of course, because the Rays, I don't know, something magic happens there when you're a pitcher. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. It is super boring, but I mean, when you look at the roster, it was obvious.
Yeah,
Dean Kramer's got less than a full. I mean, one good year. Kyle Bradish was a rookie last year. Cole Irvin's a new guy who I have my reservations about him in a full season. Grayson Rodriguez, if he's going to be the next guy, is a rookie.
That's what I was going to say, is you can, like, I don't know, do it for the meme, so to speak, quote unquote, and you can throw Grayson Rodriguez out there and the whole world is super hyped.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what does it hurt? It's not like we have a true ace and we are trying to align our rotation for anything. It's not like we got, I don't know, XYZ, coming up the next Saturday. We want to make sure we're lining this up to match up with. No, it's not like that. It's just Kyle Gibson's the old guy. Give him opening day. It's, it's like, right. That's all it is.
It's the lack of John Means here is like is very
that's the problem.
Because John Means is the guy, and not that John Means is an ace on every team, but he's like at least a number 3 on every team probably.
He's been with the Orioles for a long time, right?
Yeah, we don't have a Rodrigo Lopez even, that has been solid and on the team for a while. We have Kyle Gibson
or Jeremy Guthrie, right,
Jeremy Guthrie.
I saw something the other day. Fun fact about Rodrigo Lopez: his first opening day start was the snow opening day.
Oh, that was a great one
in like 2003 or whatever. It's pretty cool.
That was a cool one. I remember that. I remember Jay Gibbons had to chase the ball down in the corner at one point. You couldn't see it at all. The glory days.
Just a side note, was Rodrigo Lopez involved with the WBC at all for
Mexico?
I thought, I thought his name was like mentioned. Now I'm wondering if it was a different Rodrigo Lopez, but I thought he was sort of, they referred to him as the GM or something like that.
That sounds right, actually.
Yeah. The expectation is to get to the final and win it. Mexico general manager Rodrigo Lopez said in an interview with ESPN.
Yeah.
There you go. Look at that. Jesse with the inside information.
I heard it and then I meant to follow up with it. So I'm like, well, why not just bring it up on the podcast, since his name came up. So
and have somebody else Google it while you chat through.
Yeah. So anyway.
That's crazy. General
Yeah,
manager of Team Mexico.
That's pretty
Good for
cool,
him.
though. And Mexico did great. They made the
They did.
semifinals. They almost
They
knocked off
did.
Japan.
Despite not having Ramon Urias because there was an insurance issue.
Yeah, that
Ridiculous.
sucks.
His brother was on the team.
I know. Luis was on the team.
Ridiculous.
And did you see that Ramon was in all the Team Mexico commercials?
Yeah, they were like, yeah,
they
we
were
got the
like
school
two brothers
package.
from Magdalena. It's like, and
I know.
you can't get the dude in the tournament. That sucked.
I know
That made me upset.
I'm sure they were regretting that. They're like, damn it. They're like, well, we're just going to show it a bunch of times anyway. Just keep showing it.
Hope that nobody notices or something. Yeah.
I think people notice.
For sure. Especially Oriole fans.
Oh, yeah.
We noticed.
All right. Well, beyond Gibson, we're going to have Dean Kramer, Cole Irvin, and Kyle Bradish as kind of the other three that are pretty locked in at this point. I know
it is such a sorry rotation.
Well, no, hold on, real quick. They did today confirm that Kramer had the second game.
Right. I was about to say before Jesse rudely interrupted me.
Oh my god!
That as Eli had pointed out, Dean Kramer was what did I say? What was I trying to say?
The home
Confirmed.
opener.
Confirmed was the word I was trying to say. As the number 2, and then Irvin and Bradish aren't yet, but it sounds pretty clear that's what's going to happen. What the question mark that still is out there is what the Orioles are doing with the 5th spot, and if there's going to be a 5th spot, is there going to be 6 spots? Who knows? But 5 spots typically is how rotation goes, and sort of the 4 that are left as contenders are Grayson Rodriguez, Spencer Watkins, Austin Voth, and Tyler Wells. Rodriguez just pitched yesterday as of this recording, and it didn't go great. It's been kind of a rocky spring for him, up and down. His stuff has looked fine, but the results haven't always been great, which, you take that with a grain of salt in the spring. You'd love to have great results, but it just doesn't always happen that way. Eli, if you were a betting man, who do you think would be the 5th starter for the Orioles this year, going into things?
Yeah, if I were a betting man, it's Grayson Rodriguez. I think that I don't know. Even if you send him down, he's going to be up within a month. And there are the draft pick incentives. There are all that. And you can shield him a little bit while arms are fresh coming out of spring. I think I am like a good 80% confident that Grayson Rodriguez will be the 5th starter on opening day.
That's a good percentage. Still a good amount of wiggle room there.
There is some.
I think I tend to agree, but Jess, you had an interesting look on your face. Do you agree, or where's your head at?
Yeah, no, I'm right there. I think it has to be him. It has to be. I mean, nobody out of this list is more exciting. I mean, we talked about having Grayson up at the end of last year. I mean, it's got to be him that holds down this 5 spot and just, unless he gets hurt, carry it throughout the season.
Well, I think the one talking point kind of that people bring up is because he got hurt last year, his innings aren't as built up, and they're going to have to put him on an inning count, like a pretty strict one this year. And then does that impact the Orioles' playoff push down the stretch? Are we going to have what the Nationals did with Steven Strasburg a decade ago, where they just shut him down, and that's that?
I mean, I think you can send him down in the middle of the season and stretch it out to every 6 days in Norfolk, every 7 days in Norfolk that he gets a start. I don't know. I still, he is going to be on the major league team. His stuff has nowhere to go. It's already elite ace level stuff. So put him on there for opening day, get the chance of that rookie of the year compensation, the extra comp draft pick and all that stuff. It makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that. It's just the incentives outweigh all that stuff for sure. So the other 3 we'll talk about here in the bullpen conversation, I think, because some of them could factor in here. So let's talk about the bullpen. The locks for that are Felix Bautista, Cionel Perez, Brian Baker, Keegan Aiken, and Michael Givens if he is got this knee issue sorted out, which seems a little bit in flux, although I think all indications are that he will be okay for opening day, but we'll see. And then obviously Dylan Tate will be a part of this bullpen eventually, but it's confirmed he's going to start the year on the IL. He was supposed to be in the bullpen for the United States in the WBC. This injury kept him out of that as well. So
United States needed him too.
They did. Although that's the thing about the U.S. People kept talking about how good the lineup was, but they needed more pitching. In the championship game, the pitching was okay 3 runs to Japan's pretty good.
Yeah.
The lineup scored
But you
twice.
started Merrill Kelly. Like,
Yeah, I didn't even know who that was. I had to Google him.
oh, really?
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's like 30 something, and yeah, that's why I don't really know about
I
him.
mean, he's actually good though. Like he's a solid starting pitcher.
Yeah, he is, but you know,
I mean, maybe not in the context of like all the available U.S. pitcher, but he's a 4 or a 3 on like probably even maybe a 2 on the Diamondbacks. I mean, I don't know what their rotation's like.
I don't know, but
yeah.
let me just say one thing. Out of the top 20 pitchers, I forget which war this was. I just heard this on a podcast, admittedly, but out of the top 20 pitchers born in the U.S., only one of them played for Team USA, and it was Daniel Bard, who just also like absolutely sucked in the tournament. Nothing against him. He's a very talented pitcher, but he was awful.
Yeah, he kept throwing like the ball to the backstop.
Literally.
Basically. I mean, like 5 or 6 pitches.
Right.
Maybe not quite that many, but yeah.
That was something. Yeah, I mean, you think like, I don't know. You've got all these guys: Scherzer, Verlander, DeGrom, Cole.
Okay, but
and then you could even get a crew of young people: Max Fried, Spencer Strider.
That's what the U.S. gets for not properly valuing this tournament. So I don't feel bad for them. I don't.
We weren't asking you to. Just
right. I'm just saying.
We were kind of more criticizing.
I'm making it very clear. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do think there's like that. I don't know. I saw Adam Wainwright responded to a Jared Carabas tweet and said like there are a lot of people right now who, like you are kind of talking at in terms of criticizing them for not joining here, that wanted to be here, and constraints with their insurance, constraints, like we were talking about with Urias, like there were factors outside of their control that would not let them be here. But it's still like you want to see the best of the best at the tournament,
You do. And, it might change 3 years from now. There might be more leniency there or more urgency or whatever.
It's definitely a structural problem that needs to be fixed. So, pointing out like, or, blaming individuals and stuff like that isn't that important. But, yeah. Right.
That was so well said, Jesse.
Thank you. Yeah.
A rare moment. All right, so the bullpen. Let's get back to the bullpen. So with Tate definitely out for opening day and Givens potentially, but most likely on the opening day roster, that gives the Orioles about 3 more spots to fill up. So to compete for those spots, here's kind of a list there. It's Voth, Wells, and Watkins, kind of the losers from the rotation battle. Then we got Rule 5 pick Andrew Politi, DL Hall, Logan Gillespie, Mike Bauman, and Joey Krabel. Sorry, Joey. I mispronounced your name right off the bat.
I'm sure he's going to hear that.
Yeah. Eli, kind of your first instinct here. If you had to pick 3 names off that list, who are you going with?
So the person I want in the bullpen most is DL Hall. I think that it makes most sense for him, though, to go get stretched out fully at AAA and build up as a starter. The dude's got such incredible stuff that you have to keep playing that angle until it's absolutely not an option anymore. So I don't have him there. I think that I really like Voth and Wells. Wells, his stuff obviously played up throughout his Rule 5 year. We really liked him a lot. And admittedly, his stuff has taken a step back this spring to an extent. So I think that might be nice for him. After all the injury concerns, he can be a little more conservative with them. Austin Voth has experience in both roles. So, and, like we know with the 2 phenomenal breaking balls that he has, we'll be able to play that stuff up. And then you got 2 guys also, if we are talking about managing Grayson Rodriguez's innings, you've got 2 guys who can give you some length. And then my third is Mike Bauman. I like Big Mike. I think that we saw who was it? Eno Saris wrote an article about kind of the biggest jumps in his stuff plus metric, and Bauman has taken pretty substantial jumps. The fastball's got a little more ride. His slider added both horizontal and vertical movement. while maintaining its velocity about 90. So he's got the good hard fastball, the good hard slider, and his curveball is grading out as like 15-20% better than the average curveball. So I think that Big Mike is like continuing to turn into a weapon. The Orioles have, confirmed they're looking at him for a short relief role for this year and kind of transitioning him that way. So I like him. That said, when Dylan Tate comes back, I have no idea who goes down. I think the Voth and Wells conversation is a pretty interesting one. Wells kind of almost has the longer track record, but to me, honestly, I think that Voth might have a little bit more strikeout potential, which is probably what you want from the pen. I don't know. It's interesting, but Voth, Wells, Bauman for me.
Okay, Jesse.
I thought we were going to be in complete agreement, but I actually have Crable over Ballman. I think that
Crable's been terrible this spring.
I know, but
like down, like I am usually not one to put stock in it, but this is like
I get that. But
startling.
he was he gave us a whole year of being a solid reliever that I think he makes the team, and I think he's going to be up for us. I think it is going to be Voth and Wells to join him.
Wow.
I think exactly for the reasons you said. I think Voth and Wells are sort of essential. Voth, in particular, for the starting option. I know Wells sort of was a starter, or started a decent amount last year. But right, I think we're gonna need. I think Voth is the perfect guy to sort of what's the word? It starts with a V, vacillate or whatever. Or, I don't know, but in any case,
just kind of hang out there.
Oscillate?
No, maybe to go back and forth between the bullpen and a start spot here and there.
Vacillate is right.
Okay, yeah, okay. So in any case, to vacillate between a starting spot and a bullpen spot. So I think right, if there is a situation where even Grayson needs an extra rest day or something, or we give him take his spot out of the rotation for the week or whatever, both can step in, can do that. It'll be interesting to see how Wells gets used, whether he does turn into like a swing guy, but he could theoretically, we know how effective he was as a closer, and I don't think the Orioles are ready to give up on him as a starter, but we do know he could function as a back end bullpen piece. So there's that. And then and then in terms of Crable and Ballman, I give the edge to Crable just because granted, I've never been a big Crable fan, but his numbers were solid last year. He was very consistent. He pitched the whole year for us, I'm pretty sure. I don't think he was ever not in the bullpen, and I don't think, to my knowledge, maybe he did go in the IL once, but I don't think so. And Crable was solid, so I don't think you give it to Ballman, especially given his inconsistencies he's demonstrated in the major leagues historically. I don't think he's done enough to overtake Crable. So I think it's those three, and really any of the other guys I really don't even think are in the conversation. Obviously Hall, we know about him. He has his obviously, great talent and everything like that. But in terms of, Gillespie, I don't think is an option. And Paletti, I don't see him making it either. So
Paletti's there for me. The one thing about Gillespie is he's got options. So I think they just I don't know. We don't have space. So because he can go down, he goes down for me. And for that same reason, if we do keep Paletti on at the beginning of the year, Mike Bauman's got options, so he goes down for me.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head goes, is roster flexibility, which is super lame and boring, but I think the Orioles like to play that game a little bit. So I see Paletti making the roster. Not that he's the best or the most deserving, but I see the Orioles keeping Paletti on the roster and going like, hey, let's see what the kid can do a couple times. If he gets rocked, okay, we'll send him back to the Red Sox. I think that's where they got him from. And we'll bring up Gillespie or Ballman or whatever. This Crable doesn't have options, right? No options?
I don't believe so. I'll confirm.
Because that's the thing for me is if he's got an option, he's not making this team. Because I agree with Eli. He's not been great this spring.
He's given up 4 home runs in under 8 innings.
Yeah, it's not what you want. I can do that.
Crable has 2 options.
I don't think Crable's making this team.
I don't either. Yeah.
I guess my question about that is how does his poor spring override everything from last year?
Because he's a reliever. And he could be broken now. It's that easy with a reliever.
I mean,
one good season tells me nothing. How many
true.
of them are good for 5 or 6 years? Oh, like very few. Very few. Yeah. So if you
sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I let you speak for minutes uninterrupted, but please jump right in. Jump right in. So I don't think Crable's making it. So yeah, I think Paletti's gonna make it. Don't love him, but that's what I think is gonna happen. Both I agree. I think he makes it as like the long man. Wells is the one I'm kind of torn on right now because what I think they should do is start him in Norfolk and get him back into a relievers routine and then bring him back up as a bullpen piece. Because right now he's being stretched out as a starter in the spring, and I think he needs to ratchet it back down to be like a 1 or 2 inning guy, and then I think that's where he's most valuable for this team. And then I kind of like Logan Gillespie. He's had a really good spring. They protected him from the Rule 5 last year because they liked him. 7 innings this spring, 10 strikeouts, no runs. That's pretty intriguing to me. And Ballman is kind of a similar story to Wells, where they kind of just moved him back to a bullpen role. So I think you sent him down to start. So I would go with both Paletti and Gillespie. So quite different from you, Jess.
Interesting.
Controversial.
Yeah. Both Paletti, Gillespie. Gotcha.
Yeah. And you're obviously not – Paletti's going to be a 5th or 6th inning gap guy in a game that probably is not terribly close, and you're going to do that a couple times and see what he can do. But yeah, that's what we're doing.
So like in 4 or 5 weeks, hopefully when Dylan Tate comes back, who gets bumped?
Well, that's a good question, Eli.
I guess it depends on how Paletti does.
Yeah, it depends on how Paletti does. If he's struggling, he's like the easy one to just boot. He gets the Max Scruller treatment from a couple years ago, who we drafted before we drafted Tyler Wells, which is insane.
Right.
But so I think it's performance-based for Paletti, and then if not, if you want to really keep him, it might be Gillespie that goes down because he's got the options, because Voth I know doesn't have options. So that would probably be the 2 scenarios there. Cool. That was fun.
It was.
Let's get into predictions real quick before we get out of here. We'll save win-loss record for the end because I think that's the most interesting one. So let's talk about Orioles MVP. I think we would all agree that the Orioles MVP last year was Adley Rutschman, but please tell me if I'm wrong there. That's Jesse,
my pick.
Give me your MVP for the 2023 Baltimore Orioles. You can be boring and say the same thing.
What? I don't think it's a boring thing. I think it's a question of, is it going to be Gunnar or is it going to be Adley? I mean,
well, that's a big question.
I'm sort of tempted to say Gunnar.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
Do you want to justify that?
Well, obviously.
So hold on. Just the haters in the back right now are screaming, this will be his first full season. He's going to struggle. He's not as immediately elite defensively, and he plays a position that impacts the game less than Adley Rutschman. How do you counter these charges?
It's like Eli's reading my mind right now.
Right. All true. I think the offense will be there, and I think it'll be there to compensate for those things you mentioned. I do think, right, of course, right, you give Adley the edge because he's the catcher, all these things you take into account. Gunnar looked so good. Um, Plus, you give Gunnar the edge with the playing time. He's going to play more probably and more, especially if you only look at the time Adley catches. Gunnar is going to be playing in the field more than Adley. So there's that component of it. Obviously, Adley's defensive value at first base is not really going to be present. And I just think Gunnar is going to. Now, don't get me wrong. Adley takes his walks, and I love him for that. And I love that, he's as patient as he is, and he's such a disciplined hitter. I love all that. I think Gunnar showed us that he is capable of just tearing the cover off the ball. And I think that's going to go a long way. I think he will struggle at certain points. But overall, when you look at the whole season, I think his offensive numbers are going to be even better than Adley's are by the end of the year.
Wow.
So can you go a little more explicit on like, are you thinking this is a 30 home run season? Are you thinking this is
yeah,
a, I don't know, 275, 350, 450 kind of year? Like what are you thinking? OPS? Pick any metric you want.
This is a Julio Rodriguez type of year.
Yeah.
I mean, I do imagine that I could absolutely see him hitting 25 home runs. I think, yeah, I could see a slash of, 275, 340, I don't know, 800. Something like that, 800 OPS.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Slugging.
Whoa.
Sorry. Yeah. Right. I did that weird because the slugging should be the last number. But yeah. So yeah, I could absolutely see that, and I could definitely see Gunnar.
Okay, so you said 275, 340.
Yeah.
And
like one of the best rookie seasons of all time. No big deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, Adley last year was 255, 349, 432.
Yeah.
Oh no, shit. That's projections. Hold on.
Oh my god, he cussed.
Why did he? Did I? Yeah, I couldn't tell. I was halfway between double O and I.
I was just joking. We don't care.
I know. I caught myself. I'm sorry. Sorry, fans. Okay, Adley last year was 254, 362, 445.
Right. I'm talking about Henderson though.
No, for an 806 OPS. But I'm saying Adley did that last year. Now he's gonna extend that out over a full season.
Right.
Okay, so you're saying the predicted on base that's 20 points lower, the OPS that is the same. You're thinking Adley's gonna have a worse season then.
Oh, yeah, no, I do. I mean, I do expect regression offensively from Adley.
Wow.
I guess I wasn't true. I didn't,
even though he's hitting right-handed home runs.
Yeah.
I'm just grilling Jesse over here.
No. Granted, what I will say is I did not. I guess when I said like Gunnar had an 800 OPS, I wasn't in my mind. I wasn't thinking, oh, Adley did that last year. So I will say that, but I do think, Gunnar could put up an 800, even possibly higher OPS. And Adley, I mean, he's a catcher, and I don't know. I'd be surprised if the offensive numbers like didn't go down a bit for him. But even though the Orioles will be catering to him, right? Like they will be not having him catch every day and trying to preserve him and stuff like that.
Well, and the Adley numbers last year include that, like pretty much that massive slump when he first got up. Like he was terrible for like whatever 2 or 3 weeks. So
yeah, that's true.
No part of me thinks that Adley regresses this year offensively. I mean, he's granted it's spring training, but he's taken some early strides. He took Chris Sale deep from the right side. I guess that's the other thing I should say. Adley, if he figures out even remotely how to hit from the right side of the plate, he immediately becomes the best catcher in the game offensively.
So you have him as the team's MVP
I definitely have him
over
Yeah.
Gunnar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
I agree, and I don't think it's terribly close in my brain. And I think
It's
that
not in mine either. That's why I was
because my whole
harping
thing
on
with
it.
Gunnar is I think Gunner's going to be very good long term, and I think even this year he'll be like a net positive for the team. And like we can talk rookie of the year, I guess next. He's like clearly my pick for rookie of the year. I guess it's between him and probably Grayson Rodriguez, but so I think he'll be a net positive for the team. But he's going to struggle a little bit. He strikes out a bunch. He's going to strike out a bunch. He's going to hit his home runs. But I think it's going to be a little bit more of like a slightly above average season for him. And then he starts to take off maybe a little bit more in 2024. I still think he's impactful and, a good player, but I don't think he's going to be. And I think he still gets like, is part of the rookie of the year conversation for sure. But I just think we see a little bit more struggle from him. I know he had the cup of tea or the cup of coffee with the team last year and was good. I just am expecting some struggles from him this year, a little bit more than Adley did. So Adley's the easy pick for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, I mean, he's amazing. So, yeah.
Well, sorry to disappoint you, Jess. I feel like we
No,
took
no,
air out
no,
of your
no,
balloon a little bit.
it's not disappointing. I mean, I wish
Look,
I
you could make us both look very silly with that prediction. He could be far better than Adley. It's like definitely within the realm of possibility that
Right.
better than Rutschman. It's not like a ridiculous
for sure, yeah.
If you said Adam Frazier, we might look
right,
at you funny.
Yeah.
right.
We might kick you off the pod.
Now, I will ask. I mean, I don't, obviously I didn't say him. I'm not really thinking about him, but like, would we give Mullins like a 5% chance of winning this category by the end of the year, or
Sure.
how are y'all feeling about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think Mullins and Santander are both within the realm of possibility. Also,
Well, Santander, just the defense. I mean,
I know the defense isn't there,
that's
but
the
if he
thing.
goes out and he hits, 38 home runs and anchors the center of the lineup all season, like that plays. That I'm not gonna go crazy and say I expect that to happen, but I don't know. I think he definitely has another 30 home run season. I think he produces at the middle of the order the entire season. It's like it's possible.
Yeah, Santander. My whole thing with Santander is like, have we gotten the best of him already? Which obviously last year was good. I mean, he was very good. He 33 home runs, 89 RBI, 117 OPS plus, 773 OPS. Like he was really good, but like, and the home runs are better, but like all those numbers are worse than Rutschman last year. You know what I mean? And that's like the best we've seen Santander.
Except just the home runs, right?
Yeah, right. Just the home runs are better, but everything else, and him, like the bat is his only tool.
Right.
He doesn't run. He doesn't field.
Right.
So I would give him maybe a slight chance. I would definitely say Mullins is a far better chance because he's a good fielder. And if he can figure left-handed pitching out again, that'd be awesome. That'd be a lot of help. So
we would like
I don't know. I kind of look at that as like almost a sophomore slump. Like we saw Cedric Mullins, the guy, for the first time in 2021. And then I think pitchers figured him out a bit. He was
I agree.
Still a good player, of course, but I don't know. That was kind of a sophomore slump, despite it being his like 5th year in the league.
He had a good WBC too. I mean,
hit a home run. He was like
that was nice. There. Yeah,
he plays in left field.
Bats.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, I actually do think Henderson will win it, despite not being a catcher and all that. Yeah.
We'll revisit at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Let's talk Cy Young for the Orioles. This is a tougher one because I think the Orioles starting pitching, you doesn't have to go to a starting pitcher, but the starting pitching is the best it's felt going into a season since 2016. Like it's been a while.
Yeah,
like this
been a minute
group
for sure.
feels better than it has even during the end of the Buck years. Jesse, I think you nailed this with Dean Kramer last year, and I think that's fair to say Dean Kramer was the Orioles' best pitcher for the entire season last year.
And Tyler and I just laughed when he said that.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean,
Y'all
Yeah,
ridiculed me. Yeah.
Yeah, it might have
Idiots.
been like, I don't know. We should get a clip of it and do it a year ago today,
Right.
And
Who did we even say? I don't even know who we said. I can't.
John Means.
yeah, we both said
Oh, okay.
John
Well,
Means.
Well,
fair.
and I said Means too, but I was like,
Right, but you
well,
said
I
there's
could
this
see a Means
outside
injury,
chance.
and
Right.
like, yeah. So,
But like outside chance for me was like, okay, Means gets hurt and it slides down to Jordan Lyles. At the time, Dean Kramer had
Well, Gene Clemmer was a reliever at the start of the year. He was in the
right.
bullpen.
He was
to
a
start the
reliever
year.
at the start of the year, and the season before he had started with us was so unbelievably atrocious that they sent him down to AAA, and
Yeah.
he was bad there. It's like he
you
had a
you don't have
genuinely
you're
bad
you're
season in AAA.
explaining your
I,
this from a year ago, like
I know, but I'm
like,
just like I'm
We're explaining
marveling.
you are the mad scientist genius, Jesse.
Right.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it. So
You saw through
And-
the noise to find the
yeah.
signal, and
Yeah.
Well, do you want to start us off here, Jesse? Since you're the
Yeah,
reigning
go.
champion in the category.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kramer is a decent pick for it, but I'm gonna go with Bautista. I mean, I just think, despite being a closer, I mean, he's just so incredible and so fantastic. And I mean, I don't think any of our starting pitchers will have an ERA under 3.5, probably. So, Kramer maybe can get, to 3 or a bit above 3, but most likely, our starting pitchers won't have an ERA above 3.5, especially with all the rule changes that are happening to help the hitters, the banning of shifts, etc. So so I just think Bautista is going to continue, throwing 100 miles an hour with the disgusting splitter, and post a microscopic ERA over the course of the season, below under 5 saves over the course of the season, and just be dominant, below less than 5 saves
Okay.
over the course of the season. So I said less, and then I said over the course.
Well, I thought you said right. I heard below under.
Yeah, it was a weird way to say it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So,
Anyway.
So I just think he's
great,
incredible, and I think he'll take it. So,
yeah, I'll follow up. I don't know. I think I'm saying this partially just to hopefully give a different answer. I think my logical pick would probably be Felix also. But that said, I'm going Kyle Bradish. He was just so unbelievably good at the end of last year.
I thought you were going to say Kyle Gibson. I was like, my God. Yeah, I was joking.
But... his stuff, like in that same, Saris article with The Athletic, where he shouted out Mike Bauman. He talked about Kyle Bradish as well. Bradish's stuff has taken a nice jump. I think that, I don't know, what we saw at the end of last year, seeing him go toe-to-toe with the Astros and shut them down, the back-to-back starts with him and Kramer, like, that was a version of Kyle Bradish, that I think really, really has a lot of potential. I think that there's some pretty exciting prospects with him. So I'm going to say he puts it all together and walks away with this Cy Young Award by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ballsy pick because I think Bradish is like the boomer bust pick of this group, because I do think like there's a lot there to like about him, but I could also very easily see a scenario where he falls apart a little bit and has to like go to Norfolk and figure stuff out for he feels like that kind of a guy too.
I feel I would be remiss if I didn't actually like mention Grayson. I think that Grayson has some struggles throughout the year. And I think he also doesn't necessarily accrue enough innings. We've talked about that, but I think he'll get sent down a couple times just to manage the workload and gear up for a September, October run.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I thought about Bradish. Bautista makes a lot of sense. I think I might just go for the repeat and say Dean Kramer. It's definitely like a safe pick, but he had a nice, he pitched once in the WBC and it was against Nicaragua. So, It is
Jesse
what it
and I
is.
Hey,
saw it
we were
live.
there.
He was.
Yeah.
You guys witnessed it. He was
Yeah.
good. He was
He
good.
was good.
All the Israeli pitchers were good that day.
Yeah.
Right.
They gave up
Nicaragua
like
was, like, maybe a
one
single A
hard
team,
hit.
so.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there to like. He really impressed me last year. He just every time out he competed, he looked good. I remember him being really strong in that Little League World Series game they played in. Yeah, he just really impressed me down the stretch every time out to the mound, which is just not what I was expecting from him. His lack of strikeouts do worry me a little bit, especially with some of the rules that Jesse just talked about. They're going to hurt him, I think, potentially more than most of the Orioles' other starters. But I'm just going to go with the consistency there and assume he continues what he showed last year. And I think I've looked at some projections this offseason. I think it was Fangraphs Zips projection thinks he's going to be like really good this year, like the Orioles' best starter. So take that for what that's worth. But yeah, going to go Dean Kramer.
It's wild we're in a situation where you're saying Kramer would be the safe pick out of the group, right?
Right.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable because, right, a year ago, you probably would have described him as the boom or bust guy that you're describing Bradish as.
I didn't think there was any boom a year ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, and like you were saying, I mean, I think Bradish is an interesting pick. I think Tyler is 100% correct to point out he might end up in Norfolk, in a few months. And the starts against the Astros were obviously impressive.
And that start against the Cardinals earlier in the year, that was impressive too.
Right, for sure. Were those things a little smoke and mirrors? I do wonder about that, but obviously there's potential there that the Orioles need to explore. But yeah, I think it'd be tough for him to win the Orioles Cy Young. So,
all right, there you go, Eli. Terrible pick, according to Jesse.
Well, I'm not saying all that. But...
Well, I mean, we told him he sucks for Gunnar, so for the MVP pick. So
that's fair. Well, let's talk rookie of the year.
I will say, I'm not sure we even actually all said that we think Gunnar for rookie. Oh, you're doing rookie of the year last.
Yeah, we're going to do rookie of the year.
This is awful. I'm going to shut up right now.
Fine. Well, Jesse's pick, I would imagine, is Gunnar for rookie of the year.
No, I have someone else winning rookie of the year. That'd be wild if I gave him the Cy Young, or the MVP, but not the rookie of the year.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. Who could you even say would be rookie of the year?
How would that be possible? Yeah.
Eli, do you want to give your pick for rookie of the year? Did you say Gunnar?
Yeah, no, that's it. There's really like no explanation necessary, I don't think.
Not buying into Paletti or something like that.
No, the only question is Grayson, but yeah, like we've talked about, I think the Grayson's innings will be limited, so I think he'll be up and down a little bit, or just restricted in other ways. Gunnar's going to be in the lineup every single day, like 145, 150 games out of this year, and he's going to beat up on some major league pitching.
Yeah, have to agree. The only other one I feel like we should just mention in this spot is DL Hall, just because of the pedigree of talent that he is. And I could see a scenario where they go, yeah, we want you to be a starter long term, but let's just put you in the bullpen. And he just is kind of amazing out there, but that's still not going to be enough to overshadow what Gunnar's going to do every single day, regardless of some of the struggles we've all talked about. I think Gunnar's the obvious pick there for sure. All right. Go ahead.
How do we get DL Hall onto this team this year?
I don't know.
I really it's so crowded.
Well, I think you were right earlier when you said that they're going to keep trying the starter thing because it's just so much more valuable than even a really good bullpen arm. They gotta try it. So I think this is the last year of that though. So he's going to go down, I think, stretch out, see when a spot can be used in, and just hope he performs and kind of figure it out from there.
Yeah, but I think we've already got all the starting options that we've talked about. John Means comes back in July, theoretically.
Sure.
I don't know. I just don't know when those spots open up.
Yeah, but injuries happen. I think the Orioles were I mean, the starting pitching got kind of ravaged last year by injuries. They were very fortunate to like not completely fall apart.
To have Spencer Watkins.
Spencer Watkins and Austin Voth come in and not be terrible, and Kyle Bradish to kind of figure it out because he was awful for a little while.
Yeah.
And Dean Kramer to come back from the oblique and be like good. I mean, it was kind of miraculous. Does all that happen again this year? I don't know. I doubt it. Grayson's going to probably have to going to be skipped occasionally, so that gives DL a chance.
Yeah.
So, sure. I don't know. I think just the injuries happen, and sometimes that presents opportunities for players.
Fair enough.
All right, well, let's give our ultimate predictions for the Orioles this year, wins and losses, and I guess also we should add whether they're going to make the playoffs or not. I mean, I guess sometimes from the win-loss record we'll be able to tell that, but I think right now the over-under win total, like the betting line, is 76.5, which feels like pretty bad, pretty low. And then I think Pacoda has the Orioles right now winning 74 games. But Eli, maybe I'll go to you first with what your win-loss total and Orioles season outcome will be.
Yeah, first off, I do think it's pretty disrespectful that like the team didn't get worse in any way. We're going to have an easier schedule next year. And I don't know. That's it. Yeah. Like we got very, very mildly better through the little moves that we did make. And we're going to have an easier schedule because it's more balanced this year. So I don't know. I think I've got the Orioles I see like an 85 and 77. I think we're above 500. I don't think I don't know. I'm dropping that down to 84. It just felt a little high.
Yeah. We haven't been in this territory in a long time. It feels so odd to be like, a winning record, first of all. And then 85, that would have been playoffs last year or close to it.
Yeah. And I think we are close. We had 83 last year and we were close to it. That's what it was.
We were close and then we struggled at the very end and fell out of it. Right. We had all the problems with the Blue Jays and
Yeah. I'll give us one more win this year. I think that as to whether we make the playoffs, I don't think we make the playoffs. I hate to say it. I think we're like around when September rolls around, but I think the rest of the AL East is also very happy about the more balanced schedule. And I think the Rays, the Blue Jays, the Yankees absolutely take off. Particularly the Blue Jays. I think they're going to go off this year.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Jess, how are you feeling?
I agree. I'm going to pick a different number than Eli. I've actually had this number. So I'm going to say we're going to do the same exact win-loss record as last year. We're going to go 83 and 79. For some reason, I was thinking last year it was the other way around, and I don't know why I thought that because, we won 500. But
what you thought they were 79 and 83?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, and I thought this year we were going to turn that, basically reverse our win and loss numbers. But I have us right. The other teams in our division got slightly better this offseason. And
I don't know if the Red Sox got better.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
That's the one exception. Because they lost Bogarts. So that's
they got Yoshida from Japan. He might be good. But
I'm very, especially after watching the WBC, I'm very intrigued to watch him, and I'm really upset he's on the Red Sox, especially after watching him in the WBC. But putting that aside, the Orioles, we didn't do anything this offseason. I think we're going to be sort of squirming around to figure out positions a little bit and figure out what our lineup every day is going to look like. And I think there's going to be some adjustments, and there are going to be some Austin Hayes, Kyle Stowers things we're going to have to sort through and all that kind of stuff. And then let alone the Frazier and Urias, like second base problem, so we're going to have some issues with that. I think the rotation also, right. I see some issues happening potentially with Bradish, Kyle Gibson. Hopefully he gives us innings. Hopefully he's just a durable, reliable piece. I don't necessarily trust that fully. So I just think there's a lot kind of up in the air at this point, and I don't have us making the playoffs. I have us 83 and 79, and it's sort of gonna feel like somewhat of a lost year because we could have done a lot more to make ourselves better, and we didn't. Obviously, there's still opportunity at the deadline, but
yeah. I feel very similar, and I'll go with the same prediction, 83 and 79, which I know is boring, but a thing is going up on Camden Chat next week, and that's the record I picked, so I have to stick with it. I can't have two different things. Yeah, and I think a lot of the same things. I know if you look at our runs scored versus runs allowed, we actually allowed more runs than we scored last year. So the 83 and 79 from last year, it wasn't exactly indicative of how well the team was. They were probably a little worse than that, got a little lucky. So I think the team maybe feels a little bit more complete this year, but it might not come out to a difference in the win-loss column. So yeah, clearly I wouldn't have them making the playoffs with that record. But I think we'll still see a lot of positive things. You get the debut of Grayson. He might struggle, but I think that's still a positive. Gunnar full season, that's good. Adley, I think, is going to be fantastic again. And that kind of rolls into my other prediction for the season, which I think this is going to be the first year since 2016 that the Orioles are going to send more than one player to the All-Star game. I think they're going to send 3, and I think it's going to be Rutschman, Bautista, and Santander. Those are my 3 All-Stars from the Orioles this year. Pretty big.
Yeah. I had not thought about this question.
Oh, you didn't have to. I just was throwing it out there.
But the fact that you threw it out there, now we have to contemplate.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
I'm gonna throw Gunnar on just because I think people will be hyped up and it's a fan vote, and I think he'll surprise some people early on before they figure him out. So Adley, Bautista, and Gunnar.
Okay, so you have 3 as well. Interesting.
Yeah, I'll go 3.
Why no Santander?
I think he'll be good. I just don't think he'll be an all-star.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think Adley and I think Bautista are basically locks for it. I don't think there's much.
I don't know if Bautista's a lock. He's very good, but there's no household name recognition yet. Adley has the household name recognition,
right? But it's not a fan vote for the pen. I mean,
that's fair enough.
Yeah. That is right. That's a very good point. I forgot that.
Yeah, like the managers are gonna are gonna be picking them. So yeah, I mean, barring an injury or something, I think Bautista is a lock. Yeah. So
okay, just so those 2.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think Henderson, despite my earlier prediction, I don't think he's going to make it.
Sending conflicting messages.
No, I'm very consistent.
I would say the players and coaches don't like to put rookies in the All-Star game. It doesn't feel like to me. So
yeah. Well, there's that, and then as far as Santander, I mean, I think he's not going to, just because the DH position is a hard one to get. So I think he'd have to be one of the one of the 4 finalists that get voted on by fans or something like that in order to sneak on. So
it's fair enough. All right, cool. Well, what a depressing way to end it. None of us think they're going to the playoffs.
Yes, we should have led with that.
I know. Damn it. You guys could have turned the podcast off early.
Right. Well, I mean, we should have talked about it.
We didn't even talk to each other.
No, I mean, we could have had one of us insert no, I actually think we're going to win 94 games. And,
Are you talking about artificial confrontation?
Yeah, artificial predictions.
Yeah. Right. What do you think this is, ESPN?
It's called content creation, okay?
Right. Hey, I mean, at least our listeners can rely that we are going to be honest. We're not going to deceive them and get them hyped up and get them listening to our podcast because we're going to be really good this year. No, we're just going to give them the truth.
We're going to be very mediocre and boring. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, all right. Yeah. And then next year when, we want to make our team better, then we can,
after we've signed Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, exactly. Then we can give them a better prediction, so yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. If you guys want better more interesting predictions, tell
Right.
Mike Elias to sign Shohei Ohtani to a $500 million contract. It's
Right.
that
Literally.
easy.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be that simple. So
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I'm excited about the season anyway, even though none of us think they're going to the playoffs.
I am
Hopefully they
too. I
surprise
am
us.
too. Yeah. And right. I mean, even if we don't go to the playoffs, like we are going to have an exciting brand of baseball this year.
Yes.
So that's
There-
really good to look forward to.
There are a lot of reasons to be happy to be an Orioles fan this year, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And one of those reasons is this podcast, I think.
Hopefully.
So make
I think
sure you're
I think we're a positive contribution.
Yeah, and we crossed the 500 follower threshold, I think, over the winter, which was a big deal. Eli's running the show over there, so thank you for that. And if you guys aren't following us, you should go over to Twitter at The Warehouse Pod. You can also email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. We will try and sift through the spam that's going to Florence in our email inbox. It's just a disaster, but
Yeah, I don't get it at all. I don't know who Florence is, how this happened. That's
she
wild.
signed us up for all kinds of stuff, and we get a ridiculous amount of email every day. But you can email us, and we'll figure it out. And yeah, definitely the biggest of all is subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to thewarehousepod.substack.com and subscribe to us that way, and we'll go to your email inbox. But yeah, guys, that's all we got. We're going to try to get you with weekly episodes this year. We're working on that internally to get that sorted out. So subscribe and come back every week for your Orioles content. But until then, you have been listening to the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
And let's go O's.